I wish it was Christmas today. I wish it was Christmas today.
Christmas every day. Christmas every day. Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody from Gallatin, Tennessee. Welcome to Christmas Every Day. Now, this is the podcast that keeps the spirit of Christmas alive all year long. My name is Troy, and I'm your host. So, listen, if this is your first time checking the show out, thank you. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you checking the show out. And we want you to know we do this all year long. So, we release a new episode almost every Friday. So, Christmas just really never has to end. And to our repeat listeners, thank you so much for coming back. Thank you for being part of the Christmas Everyday family. You guys are the one absolutely helping us to keep it going. I want to give a quick shout out to Rusty Anderson in Mississippi. Rusty sent us a Christmas card back after we sent the Christmas cards out for Leon Day and sent us a really nice one. And so, Rusty, thanks a ton, man. We really appreciate the Christmas card. That was really cool of you to do that. Now, today is July 10th. And look, just because somebody writes an instant Christmas classic doesn't mean that they're necessarily a smart person. I was going to record this last night, but I was just really tired and I went to bed. And I got up early this morning, and now the dogs are just all over the place, and one of them won't come in, and it's raining outside. It's one of those mornings so far. So he said, you know what? I propped the back door open, and I got a cup of coffee in front of me in my Buc-ee's Christmas mug because y'all know how we do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna record my episode on Friday morning, and that's what I wound up doing. So it wasn't. Look, it instant Christmas classic doesn't equate smart. Okay, it never will. I didn't know that until I wrote an instant Christmas classic, but it is what it is. Listen, July is in full swing now. I've got to tell you, I'm getting in the Christmas spirit more and more every single day. Look, it usually hits me around July most years, but it's hitting a little harder this year. Probably because now I do a Christmas podcast. But I'm telling you now, I have a learned appreciation for Hallmark Christmas movies that I've never had before. I just used to never watch them, and that's just about all I've watched so far this month. I've also still got I'm up at Christmas Carol on track to watch this month, but it's mostly just been Hallmark Christmas movies, and I don't understand my newfound fascination with them because it's not like I don't know what's gonna happen. The girl is gonna get the guy, or vice versa. There's gonna be a slight hiccup about 80% of the way through the movie that it's going to remedy itself by the end of the movie. Um, the bakery is going to be saved from being sold to the evil giant corporation. It's always the same thing, almost always. There's a couple of different variations, most of the time. Uh, that kind of reminds me, I really think I'm doing life wrong. I feel like my wife and I just ought to be running a little, I don't know, like a little bakery somewhere in some cool little mountain town called Pine Tree Valley or something, cool like that. A little town that actually gets some snow in December instead of where it's 60 degrees on Christmas. And, they do like caroling in the town square every year. Why are we doing that? Anyway, I got off track there. But I do love watching those Hallmark movies. I really do. The Great American Family Channel has some really good ones too. But the best ones, they're obviously on Hallmark Channel. I'm going to keep a running tab on the movies that I've watched so far so I can go back and listen to the corresponding episode on the Deck the Hallmark podcast, which I thought was an absolutely ridiculous concept until just about last year, and now it's one of my favorite podcasts. So, you live and you learn. All right, well, listen. Oh, we have a listener email this week, and our listener writes, quote, "Merry Christmas. My name is Jay Frederick, and my wife and children and I live in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We heard about your podcast from the North Pole News Dispatch podcast last month, and we're very glad to have found another year-round Christmas podcast. We're thinking about doing a bi-monthly Christmas podcast of our own, and we'd love to have you on as a guest sometime. We also like the reaction videos that you did on YouTube and hope to see more of those. Thank you for keeping the Christmas spirit going almost every Friday, and happy Christmas in July. Man, that's awesome. Al- Almost every Friday. Thanks to Tunjay. Listen, we really appreciate you and your wife listening. I would love to be a guest on your show. I would also be delighted to have you both on as a guest on my show when you've got your podcast up and running. So please, please, please keep in touch. Let's get that done. See, look, that's just awesome. I love to see that other people are kicking around the idea of doing their own Christmas podcast. You know, there's just not enough of them to listen to on a year-round basis. I bet Jay and his wife are going to come up with something really, super cool that we're all really going to like. I bet they're going to. And look, for anybody else thinking about maybe doing a Christmas podcast or any kind of podcast, I'll say this. If you do it, you're going to be welcomed by more people than you'll ever imagine. And those people are going to give you encouragement, and they're going to give you a bunch of ideas. They'll give you a bunch of motivation. I've experienced all of these things in the last year that I've been doing the show, and I would expect nothing less for anybody else, who wanted to dip their toes in the proverbial Christmas podcast waters. And I'll definitely be your biggest cheerleader. All right, well, let's see where we are on the calendar.
Santa's coming to town!
Santa! Oh my God!
Santa here? I know him. I know him.
Did you know that it's only 168 days until Christmas? Did you know that? Okay. So last week I got the number wrong, and I was a week behind. So last week I said that it was 182 days left until Christmas, when it was really 175. This week it's 168. So I was kind of a week behind last week. I'm not really sure what happened with that. It's somebody else's fault, I'll tell you that. But it's 168 this week. That's only 24 weeks. Can you believe this? So, oh, look, this is shaping up really nicely too, because July 25th, it's on a Saturday this year. That's when we're going to be celebrating Christmas in July officially with the party that we're going to have at our house. And then Christmas Day is on a Friday. So, a lot of us are going to be looking at, maybe like a 4-day weekend if we're lucky enough to have off of work on Christmas Eve. So that's really something to look forward to. And it's only 53 days until September 1st, which, of course, is the beginning of the Burr months, and that's the absolute best time of the year. All right. Now, before the countdown, I mentioned that I feel like my wife and I should be running a little bakery, in some little Hallmark town that's called something like Pine Tree Valley. And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? Why stop there? Isn't the town itself usually one of the most beloved characters in most of the cheesy Christmas movies that we all love anyway? If I could design the perfect Christmas town from scratch, what would that look like? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to find out. So over the next, however many weeks, we're going to do a short segment each week called Welcome to Pine Tree Valley, where I'm going to construct, at least in my mind, the perfect Christmas town. Does it look like Bedford Falls? Does it look like New York City? Does it look like the North Pole? Yeah, okay. You know what? Maybe probably not the North Pole, but maybe it looks like Stowe, Vermont. As always, we'd love to hear what your favorite Christmas town has in it, and you can let us know at christmaseverydayshow@gmail.com, and we're going to have a full-fledged discussion on it if you let us know. So in this maiden voyage segment of Welcome to Pine Tree Valley, because that's the name I'm going with for this magical Christmas town, Pine Tree Valley. It's not necessarily Christmassy, I know, but it just sounds like something that to me would be in like a Hallmark movie. I need to figure out the location. Is it in the mountains? Is it on a lake? Is it in the woods? The woods are much different from the forest now. Is it in the heartland of farming country? You know, where's this town going to be? This is kind of exciting, guys. I love Christmas towns, and this is just kind of fun. This is a tough one because it seems to me like a little town out in the country. It just sounds really charming. You know, all right, wait, this may not be the best movie to reference in the world, but think about the little town in the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, if you're of a certain age like I am. The little town that Julia Roberts moved to after she faked her death, you know, to get away from her husband. That was one of the nicest looking little towns that I've ever seen in my life. And so something like that would be pretty cool, you know, out in the country, right? But I think Pine Tree Valley is going to need to be in the mountains. We're creating a Christmas town, so it's going to need to be in the mountains. And I think there's 3 reasons for that. The first one being that there's a higher likelihood of snow, you know, during the holiday season. You want it to be snowing during Christmas because, you know, we're talking about the perfect Christmas town here. Second reason is because the perfect Christmas town has to have a Christmas tree farm. You know, the mountains would kind of be ideal for the Christmas tree farm. Third reason that it should be in the mountains, I think, is because Pine Tree Valley I don't think would be like too many pine trees if it was in Kansas or, you know, like Oklahoma, maybe Nebraska. You know, I don't think there's too many pine trees out that way. I could be wrong. I've never been to Kansas or Nebraska. I might be wrong, but I don't think that I am. And I don't know, it'd just be kind of embarrassing to have to try to explain that one to the tourists. Anyway, plus, you know, in the mountains, you have a higher likelihood of having that whole one road in, one road out, you know, scenario that's so appealing to a ton of people. Think Twin Peaks. Think Twin Peaks, okay? Now, is there a lake nearby? Well, I believe that there should be a lake nearby, because where else is everybody going to go ice skating while they're drinking hot chocolate? We have to think about these things, okay? What else? Oh, no, what kind of population numbers would Pine Tree Valley have? That would be a pretty important question to ask. I'm thinking probably about 5,000 or so, because you need plenty of people to keep the local businesses going, to all the rich bakery owners and all the wealthy coffee shop owners and the wealthy hardware store owners. People have to make those things go, and they have to, you know, buy that stuff. There have to be a bunch of people to make the city functions, you know, like the Christmas parade run right, and the Christmas parade would be at night, of course. You know, and one of the most important thing is you've got to have a good sized crowd to, you know, gather around the happy couple when the guy gets the girl, or vice versa. But it also doesn't need to be too big of a crowd. Planning a city is not necessarily easy. It's not as easy as writing an instant Christmas classic, I'll tell you that. But you know, according to absolutely no research whatsoever, I believe that 5,000 or so residents would allow for only 1 or 2 stoplights, and that's a charming part of most, you know, smaller little towns. 1 would be preferable, but 2 certainly wouldn't be the end of the world. Look, I spent like 4 minutes thinking about that one. Okay, so I'd say Pine Tree Valley is off to a really, really good start, and we're going to be adding more and more to this town as we go along, and I think sooner or later you guys are going to start seeing it in your head, especially the closer we get to the holiday season. You guys are going to start envisioning this thing, and it's going to be really cool. You're going to wish you were there for the holidays. All right, so let's wrap this bad boy up with the Carol of the Week. Now, you guys can check out the Christmas Every Day Christmas Carol of the Week Spotify playlist by checking... I can't believe I got that out again. You can click on the link in the show notes, and I'm telling you now, you're going to be glad that you did. This is good. This is turning into a cool playlist. This week's Carol of the Week comes to us from a band that's not necessarily a household name, but they did some really, really good Christmas music. So, formed in 1918 at Penn State College, Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians made a name for themselves in the first half of the 20th century by being somewhat of a novelty act. But they also did a few really good Christmas albums, and they took those very seriously. And those albums are really underrated. All right, I hate reading. Gosh, I'm not. I don't know. Ugh, gross. I actually love to read, but just not out loud. The carol that caught my eye from this one of these albums is Adeste Fideles. This is one of my favorite Christmas carols because it's mentioned in my favorite Christmas short story called The Man and the Birds by Paul Harvey. I think I did an episode on that one last year, right around Christmas times. You guys should go back and check that one out. And also because it's sung a cappella, and that's like really rare for a Christmas song, unless you're Pentatonics, and the song's done very, very well. Let's check out a couple of moments of this beautiful, beautiful song. Isn't that great? What a great song. It's a beautiful song. I love it when people do stuff a cappella, but I also love it when, people do songs and it sounds like there's like 100 people singing, but there's only like 5. That's what this one reminds me of. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. I want everybody to have a great weekend, be safe, and from our family to yours, Merry Christmas.